Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmad Bazzi. I'm coming from Dearborn, Michigan. I'll be comparing the different leadership systems, the divine system, the prophetic system versus the tyrannical systems, and just analyzing the reappearing elements that shape up these systems throughout history and until our present time, and pretty much the influences and impact that both these systems have upon mankind and the ultimate agenda that they seek for the masses, and why these two systems are usually at a contradiction with one another, and what we can take from all of that to our personal lives, and how we can use that to become more aware and awake. So Allah will not change a condition of a people unless they change what is within themselves. So my primary hope is that I become aligned with the truth, and ultimately the greater society does. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. So the title of my presentation is Leading the Masses, Prophets versus Tyrants. And for the Prophets side, I'm going to focus on the divine prophets and the Imams who were the extension of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for the tyrant side, all tyrants throughout history up until today, but with a primary focus on the US and the Zionist regime who seem to be the leading tyrants of the world today. So 4 essential questions that inshallah I seek to answer. Number 1, what are some of the repeated elements that appear in tyrannical systems? Number 2, how do these differ from prophetic systems? Number 3, how do these different elements influence and impact mankind? And lastly, what effect do I have in the formation of these systems? So these are the various elements that inshallah I will be analyzing among the two systems. So first, in a tyrannical system, the qualifications of the leader who leads in that kind of system is not really based on anything that relates to God or spirituality or ethics. And a great example is the president of this country that we have currently. A lot of them had been involved in scandals and different inappropriate behaviors, but yet they maintained the leadership that they held. Whereas in a divine system, in a Tawheedi system, the leader is essentially appointed by God and usually possesses some form of spiritual perfection and high ethics that are dependent on God's system and God's doctrine, and essentially is led by a high moral compass. Another element of a tyrannical system is the tool of deception. As the brother mentioned, the US had signed many treaties with the Native Americans and failed to uphold even one of them. And in our day and age today, you see that the US invades countries, invaded Iraq on the pretext of weapons of mass destruction, but it was figured out afterward that that wasn't true, as well as Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Iran, the whole Islamophobia campaign. Usually the tool of deception is used to secure the interests of the tyrant, irrespective of what is being delivered to the masses. Whereas in the divine system, you see that there is an emphasis on honesty and transparency with the masses. When the Muslims, during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, were requesting for his leadership, he made it clear to them that I will rule with strict justice, and if you took money from Baytul Mal, the treasury, you will be forced to have that returned. So he made it clear, he was transparent, the masses knew what they were getting into. They weren't deceived into anything. Another element that we see in a tyrannical system is the promotion of lust and immodesty. You look at Hollywood, the clothing industry, advertisements, the music industry, there's this heavy promotion of lust and indecency. Whereas in a divine system, you see that modesty is protected and preserved from the garments that we wear, how we dress, the hijab, restrictions on physical contact in society, the lowering of one's gaze, the marriage process. There's a strict emphasis on maintaining modesty within society, which is different than what we see in a tyrannical system. Another element is that in a tyrannical system, usually honor is based on worldly factors. How much material you acquire, how much power, wealth you have, that usually is correlated to how respected you are. Whereas in a divine system, we see that one's honor is based on one's God consciousness. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most honorable among you is the one who is most God conscious. This is a verse in Quran. A further element we see in a tyrannical system is this idea of moral relativity. Because God is not the focal point in such a society, everything is justified. There is no clear right or wrong, true or falsehood. Everybody is able to come up with their own version of what's right and wrong, and no one can argue otherwise. And it creates chaos. At one point you say homosexuality is immoral. Further down the road you say that it's fine, it's moral. There's always this competing doctrine because nothing is stable. Everyone is subjected to having their own moral doctrine. Whereas in a divine system, there's an establishment of moral objectivity, that there is a right and wrong, there is truth and falsehood, and everyone is expected to adhere to that moral code. In a tyrannical system, the family unit, which is regarded as the most important institution in society, is usually weakened, and there are reasons for that. But before I get into the reasons, I just want to mention a few statistics. So currently there are around 2 million marriages in the U.S. per year. The marriage rate is 6.8 out of every 1,000 members of the U.S. population. And there is a divorce rate of 3.4%, which is about half. So out of all the marriages that occur in the U.S., the statistic is about 50% of them will end up getting divorced. And 1 in 15 marriages last more than 10 years. Some of the reasons that may be correlated to this, for example, the promotion of homosexuality, the idea of dating before marriage, the idea of leaving the home before the age of 18. All these things weaken this institution of a family. Whereas in a divine system, you see that the family is strengthened. We have Hadith al-Kisa, which shows the beautiful etiquette that existed among the members of the Ahl al-Bayt. You have the treaties of rights, Risalat al-Huquq, which show the rights that family members have upon one another. You have the marriage process where it is secured and protected, and the family has to be approached in the proper way that maintains the modesty and decency of the marriage. And you see, lastly, that divorce is the most hated halal in our religion, giving one the idea, the sense that it is a very unrecommended act, and it should be a last resort before the family is broken and separated. Another element is that the tyrannical system leads to this idolization of the self, where everyone becomes their own god. The world revolves around my desires. In comparison to a divine system, the glorification of God is the core of that society, where I am a creature, I am a creation, and God is the core that I revolve around. God is my qibla. God is my Kaaba that I revolve all my decisions and intentions around. In a tyrannical system, there is usually an inconsistent judicial system. The rich usually get away with some crimes, they have lesser sentencing. Whereas in a divine system, no one is above the law, even the head of the state. There's a story of Imam Ali alayhi salam when he was Khalifa. There was a Jewish man who stole his armor, and they were taken to court. And Imam Ali alayhi salam stood before the judge of his government. And the judge referred to him as Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he told him, stop. If you're going to call him by his regular name, you treat me as a regular citizen as well. So as they went through the court procedures, by law, there had to have been shuhud, witnesses that seen that this was Imam Ali's and it was taken from him. And there were no witnesses for Imam Ali, even though, of course, Imam Ali knew it was his. Despite that, the judge said, since there's no witnesses, you can't claim it as your property. And Imam Ali said, that's fine. He can take that. And the Jewish man, after seeing the humbleness, the sincerity, the honesty that Imam Ali had to the law that was established, he stopped and he said that, I did take this armor from Imam Ali, and after seeing his humbleness and his sincerity, I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the true Lord and that Muhammad is his messenger, and he became a Muslim after that. So, looking at these elements, why do these elements exist in a tyrannical system? If we look at the Quran, Surah Zukhruf, verse 54, there's a verse that says, talking about Fir'aun, who's symbolic of tyrants in the Quran. He's usually that symbolic figure of tyranny. And it says, فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ فَأَعْطَاهُ, which means that he basically bluffed or fooled or misled or stupefied his people, and they obeyed him. Now, when we see that, you understand that a tyrant fears the revolt of his people. He needs to protect his kingdom. And as long as you keep the masses asleep and distracted and obedient to their desires and lost in their desires, you could succeed in keeping them away from revolting. Because revolting requires a knowledge and insight of right and wrong, truth and falsehood. So a further question is, who also promised these elements or this concept upon mankind? If we go to Surah Al-Hijr, verse 39, the Quran promises here also to distract mankind, to mislead mankind, to bluff mankind. So essentially we could see that the tyrannical systems point to a greater picture. They point to a satanic element that has been mentioned in the Quran. So essentially a tyrannical system is a satanic system. In the divine system, we see these elements as well. And you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet, they wish for the perfection of mankind. And it becomes important to understand what elements exist in a tyrannical system and how they influence us, because those become impediments on our journey to true salvation, true freedom, and true perfection. And one interesting point is that these systems throughout history, they have been fighting for one another's elimination. And the reason for that is a prophet or haqq, truth, is a threat to one who uses falsehood to acquire their interests, to oppress. So when a prophet came to establish true justice of God, that tyrant, it means that it was a threat to his establishment of falsehood and injustice. So they had to get the prophets and the imams out of the way. And likewise, for a divine system who establishes true and pure justice for the sake of achieving true perfection of the human being and gaining true taqarrub ila Allah, the tyrants who put up these impediments that essentially oppress the human being also become a threat, and that's why we fight for that elimination as well. Taking that all into account, it's important for us to realize that within each of us there's a tyrannical system and a divine system that is fighting one another. And our journey through that internal struggle, which is regarded as Jihad al-Akbar, really reflects our position in the outer struggle, the greater struggle, which is the divine movement of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. So inshallah, just to end, a question that we could leave off with is, where am I in this greater struggle? And where are you in this greater struggle? Inshallah, that will end our discussion.